Note to self: when trying to vlog with an iPhone, hold it landscape, otherwise you end up with an enormous space you've got to fill with something. Don't worry, I'll put a pretty picture in there or something, and it'll only be for a couple of minutes as we go through the intro. Good morning, YouTube, and welcome to the trails. So, the video today is about a couple of new Garmin devices I got. Now, you might remember a while back I did a video comparing my Garmin Fenix 5 to my Fenix 3 and concluded that, to be fair, the 3 is a better watch for me personally. And I really couldn't justify the upgrade to the 5, even though I've already bought it. But it got me thinking about all of the Garmin watches I've discarded over the years. You know, there were some gems in there. The old Forerunner 310XT, 910XT, even my old Forerunner running watches. They're all pretty good units. And it got me thinking about, if I was getting into this again, knowing what I know, what Garmin would I buy? And to be honest with you, I think I'd spend as little money as possible. I'd go looking for the features that I want, which are good GPS tracking. I'd want it to be able to do that. I'd want it to be able to track heart rate. I'd probably, you know, on the bike, it'd be nice if you could get a couple of metrics like cadence or even power in there. And let's think, what else? Multisport, obviously, so it's got to be able to track a run, a bike, and would be nice if it could track a swim. And them's basically the features I want, because when I look at the data that comes out of the Fenix 5, half of it I don't use. Ground contact time, balance and stuff like that. Never used it. It's just a nice metric. It just looks good on the Garmin Connect page. So anyway, thinking about this, I thought, well, if I was advising somebody who was getting into this sport where to spend their money, if they were asking me about a tracking device, how cheaply could you get onto the Garmin ladder? Because I think if you could satisfy that list of features I've been talking about there, if you could do that as cheaply as possible, then you could spend your money on something worthwhile, like a better wetsuit, even some better wheels for your bike. Or even if you're just getting into the sport, you know, you're going to need trainer's bike, tri-suit and all these things. There's many other things to spend your money on. So I set myself a couple of really budget price points. One at sub £20 and one at sub £50. Jumped onto eBay to see what I could get, and what I got really surprised me. Our sub £20 contender is the venerable Forerunner 305. Launched in 2006, this was one of the first Garmin Multisport devices to include some useful sensor connectivity. Capable of tracking run, bike, and one other activity type, it really could be used for triathlon racing and training. Add to that the Auto Multisport facility, and at the time it was a bit of a no-brainer. The unit will pair with an ANT Plus heart rate strap, the Garmin Foot Pod for run metrics on a treadmill, and an ANT Plus cadence and speed sensor for cycling. With an original retail price of around £250, it was, at the time, pretty good value when compared to the competition. This particular Forerunner 305 has just set me back £11.50 on eBay. Yep, a Garmin Multisport for less than 1 month of Strava Premium. Weighing in as our sub £50 contender is the very capable Forerunner 910XT. Launched 6 years after the 305, the Forerunner 910XT was an evolution of its older brother. With an original price of around £300 and with a solid set of features, it really hit the spot in terms of value. Now, there is a model between these two, the Forerunner 310XT, but I didn't think that was enough of an evolution from the 305 to cover in this video. Unlike the 305, the 910XT was clearly designed to be triathlon specific. Like the 305, you get Auto Multisport tracking and a quick release mount to move the unit quickly from your wrist to your bike. But the 910 is water resistant to 50 metres, and Garmin really ramped up the swim metrics you could pull from it. A feature added to the 910XT that you won't find on the 305 is vibration alert. Even though the most recent Garmin watches have this, I don't think any since the 910 pull it off so well. I often miss the subtle kind of buzz from my Fenix, but you'd have to be clinically dead to miss a 910 vibrating on your wrist. I find that this works really well in the pool, where the watch will automatically count laps, so you just set a vibration alert for every 100 meters to help you keep track of distance. From new, Garmin stated a battery life of 20 hours. Now, I had a brand new one of these back in the day, and while the battery life was pretty good, I'd say that 20 hours is optimistic. The battery charging experience is pretty good, using the simply designed charging clip, and the device connects wirelessly to your PC using an ANT Plus dongle. But for me, this watch is a bit of a gem. It's the Nokia 3310 of multisport watches, the one that did everything you needed and nothing you didn't. All of this GPS loveliness is mine today for just a tenth of its original sticker price. Yep, £30 with 2 ANT Plus dongles, a couple of heart rate straps, and the quick release bike mounting kit. Bargain. So I guess it's easy to sit here and say what a bargain these were, share some fond memories and a few tech specs, but could you actually live with these things as your daily tracker? Now, I've been using both of them for a couple of weeks now, and I'd say that you really could. On the wrist, both of these are bigger than something like a Fenix 3 or 5, but not massively so. You can see from this footage how they look, but consider that both of these have their quick release kits fitted, and that makes them just that little bit more bulky. Let's talk about those quick release kits for a moment. I know that the latest wearables track everything that these do, and a ton more, but they're always there, on your wrist, and therein lies one issue for me. If I use a Fenix on the bike, I'm always having to shift my wrist off the bars to check heart rate or whatever. And I find that with the Fenix screens, I can only see one useful metric at a time. Now I don't know why, but I personally find the screens on these really easy to read, and that's with my 50-year-old eyes that really do leave something to be desired. I'd guess it's something to do with the square screen format being better suited to data presentation than a round one, which, let's be honest, is just trying to make the thing look more like a watch. Equally, it could be because on the bars they're static rather than waving around in front of me. But I do feel that the loss of quick transfer kits is almost a backward step. And let's discuss that thing about having to move your wrist to actually look at the watch. Some will say, big deal, eh? And I get it. And in the summer, with a short-sleeved jersey, it's really no biggie. But add a winter jacket or even a long-sleeved jersey in spring or autumn, and I find myself faffing, trying to get the cuff out the way just to see the watch. With these though, I simply swap it from my wrist to the bars and I've got my data right there in front of me at all times. One thing worth noting with the 910 though is that if you're using a fixed out front mount, you'll need to move the quarter turn mount through 90 degrees, otherwise the watch will not be oriented correctly, as you can see here. But that's not a problem with the band-on mounts, where you simply match the orientation of the mount to the watch. In terms of accuracy, they've both proven to be pretty solid. One thing I've noticed though, and this is with the help of Garmin Connect's lovely coloured maps, is that you can see how each watch from the 305 through to the Fenix 5 gets just that little bit quicker at processing GPS on the move. When I look at the numbers after a ride, they average out almost exactly the same. But if I look at the speed graded GPS tracks, you can see how the newer watches respond more quickly to changes in speed. On startup, GPS acquisition times are obviously a tad slower on these older watches though, but not to the point that I'd feel the need to spend another 300 quid to save a few seconds in the morning. As you can see from my tests, both acquired GPS in under a minute, so if I'm using one of these, I just leave it outside finding the satellites whilst I have my pre-ride or pre-run coffee, and they're hooked up and ready to go by the time I get through the door. So with all this said, let me summarise. Okay, so full disclosure on this one, I bought these two just for this video, and the plan was to do the video, and because I'd scored such bargains, I knew I could shift them on quite easily again on eBay. But they're not going on eBay, I'm keeping them, because I've really grown quite fond of them over the couple of weeks I've been testing them. When I look at this old 305, yeah, it's a big chunky old thing, but I don't mind it. I actually quite like the look of that. That's got kind of a retro cool that I really like. It's big and functional. There's a big antenna in here. That's why you've got that angled bit down there. But you know what? On your wrist, it's really quite comfortable. And that fabric strap it came with is top gear. Really, really like that. I use this quite a bit on the mountain bike. because I can just clip it onto the bars, and with that bike mounting kit it's rock solid, and it just sits there happily tracking what I do. I haven't got any sort of speed and cadence sensors or power meters on the mountain bike. All I want to know is how fast I went, where I went, heart rate, and the sensible stuff, and that tracks it. So that does get used. Now let's talk about the 910. I'm going to be quite honest. I've fallen a little bit in love with this old thing. It's just solid. It's just reliable. The data I get from it is the data that I want. It will track heart rate. It will track speed, pace, and all those good things. It'll even track cadence and power on the bike. It pairs up with my power meter on my winter bike. And I even used it with the Watt bike this morning to do, and I'd like the club do like a virtual Sunday ride, and it paired up beautifully with the Watt bike, tracked everything that the Watt bike puts out, speed, cadence, power, even tracked dual-sided power. So yeah, absolutely. And I just like the simplicity of it. I just like the way I can see the data that I want and the data I get out of it. You know, it's not recording anything I'm not going to use. Let's be honest though, you know, if you've got one of these later Fenix or one of the later Garmin wearables, they're great things, and you know, there's a ton of features on them. They are health trackers, so you wear them, well, when you get to the Fenix 5 and stuff like that, they really are, because they've got heart rate on the wrist and stuff like that, so you can wear them all day long and they'll give you a stress score, they'll track your sleep and stuff like that. But I would say that, you know, if you were in the market for just wanting to track your activities, either one of those would be a bargain, and they do the job admirably, dependent on what you want. Now, obviously, I got a couple of bargains here. That 305, I honestly don't know why that went so cheap on eBay. £11.50 without a word of a lie, and I think there was about £4 worth of postage on top of that. The only thing I can think was that the lister had set the listing to end just on a Sunday afternoon, on a Sunday evening rather, just as the last episode of Top Gear for this current series aired. So, you know, there was probably a bunch of people who were off watching a comedian, a cricketer and a car guy, rather than thinking about bidding on that old 305 they'd seen on eBay. Equally, with the 910 XT, the seller had only put one photograph on. There was a very sparse description. And listings like that, you know, they're a bit of a risk, because you don't always know what you're going to get, but they can be pure gold, and it was in this case. You saw all the things I got with this, you know, and the kit that I got with the 305 was absolutely comprehensive. The soft strap, the hard straps, all the tools to swap the straps over, the bike mounting kit and everything. So these were two real bargains. Now, whilst I accept that those were real bargains, equally know that I'm probably the world's unluckiest eBayer. So I'm missed that auction by 10 pence. But so if I can find those sort of bargains, I'm sure you can find those sort of bargains. I had a look this morning, and whilst there aren't any, you know, that sort of fall into the stupid cheap category that I found there are plenty out there at those price points. So you could definitely find a 305 sub 20. You could definitely find a 910 sub 50. Now, at the two of them, I would say that the 910 is an absolute solid choice. Because it just has all of those metrics on it. You know, it's practically there in terms of tracking everything a current Garmin will track, without any of the nonsense of sort of sports tracking and health tracking and stuff like that. But you know, it's completely not over the top. And for £30, can you go wrong? Really? And like I say, this thing is getting daily use at the moment. It goes on my winter bike. This one is getting daily use too. That goes on my mountain bike, and I've used both of them for runs. Trouble with me is I'm a really bad planner, and because, you know, the Fenix is always on the wrist, I often let it just go flat without realising it's going flat. So I'm sort of hunting around for something to track a run or a ride with, and now I've got two worthy little units that will do it for me if that goes flat. Equally, you know, let's not forget that e-waste is a real problem. So the more that you can do to, you know, recycle these things, you're part of the solution, not part of the problem, I'd like to think. So anyway, just my thoughts on those. I know that'll be a bit controversial, and equally I know that we've all got to, we need people to buy new Garmins, otherwise Garmin can't progress their development. They don't get the money to develop new things and stuff like that, and I'm totally with that. And undoubtedly there are people watching this for whom these would not be a good choice, and let me think, my wife would fall into that category. And the reason for that is that either one of those two is going to have to connect to a PC to sync, be it by a cable or by an Ant Plus dongle. Whereas something like that will sync automatically via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi through your phone or what have you. Now, when I think about my wife, she never goes near a PC. She never touches a PC. So in her case, she needs something that syncs through a phone or through Wi-Fi. So, absolutely. And like I say, I've got absolutely no problem with the latest Garmins. I think they are wonderful things. But I think the message from this video was that, if you're just getting into the sport and you really want to track usable metrics, don't think you have to go out and shell out a lot of money on something like that, because you can get yourself on eBay and get something like this that will do the job just as well for you. And like I say, for me to have the Garmin Fenix 5 at my disposal and actually having sort of fallen a bit in love with this old 910, I think that says something, doesn't it? Probably says more about me. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next.